So we just heard about the immense potential these agents can deliver for your enterprise. These agents which are autonomous, multimodal, deep reasoning. And I certainly want to buy into that vision. Wouldn't we all like agents that can negotiate with each other or agents that can code other agents? But it's not about the vision that is hard to buy into. It is when it comes to operationalizing that vision, taking your amazing demos and putting it into your enterprise setting to deliver transformative change within your organization. So Luke and I are going to walk you through the different stages of an agent lifecycle and help you build your agent workforce playbook to take your demos and deploy them into production so that you can take critical business dependencies on these agents. We're going to walk you through day 0, which is building the right agent, day 1, where you would be deploying these agents to operate within your enterprise, and then really think about the future concerns, because you don't want to be building your agents for the concerns that you're facing today, but really making sure that you can future-proof your investments. And we will walk you through not only the challenges or the roadblocks, but we are actually going to show you how you can navigate these effectively. So let's dive in. The example that we're going to use is one of a supply chain optimization agent. Now, this agent can access a variety of data within an organization, whether it's ERP data, customer demand data, process diagrams, even external data sources like weather and tariffs. It is going to be able to then process that data and really provide insights as well as help decision-making for that supply chain planner who is not your AI engineer, but certainly an expert when it comes to planning for this organization. And here is what the end result looks like. Now, I know we don't want to start here, and we will certainly help you build this out, but I do want to show you what an enterprise-grade agent architecture should look like. It is complex, but it is also important for you to think through all of these concerns, and we will certainly be walking you through those in the next few minutes.
Yeah, that's right. So as Prajakta said, we're forecasting the supplies of 14 bakeries around the country. So that's things like flour, butter, and sugar. And from our core systems, we have things like demand and our current supply and pricing signals. But like a lot of enterprises, there's a lot of forecasting models that help us forecast pricing, help us forecast our stocks and our demand. We want to continue to use those. They've proven themselves over years. Through Model Context Protocol on the far left, we can turn all of that data investment into tools for the agent. What I'll walk you through as we build it together is all the things on the far right too, to help us evaluate and launch that agent securely.
And it's not just the architecture or the tech that we're going to talk about, because as you just heard, agents will need to interact with humans, with processes in your organization, as well as your existing infrastructure. So we will be going through all of that. So let's talk about day 0. And as Venki was mentioning earlier, it's really about hiring the right agent. And just as you wouldn't hire an employee just looking at somebody's resume, you want to make sure you build the agent that can operate within your environment using your data. So the first roadblock or the first question you should all be asking is, which is the architecture that would work best for your use case? Not for an industry benchmark, not based on an industry benchmark, but specifically for your use case. The second question is, these agents are not going to run in silos. They will be running with the rest of your infrastructure. So how does agentic AI fit with the rest of your infrastructure? And then lastly, I am sure each one of your developers have their own favorite IDEs, their own favorite frameworks. I have my own. So the question really is, how do you enable innovation, provide choice and flexibility without enabling shadow AI within your organization? So Luke, how does a CIO navigate these day 0 challenges?
Great. So switching over, we're going to hop into the DataRobot platform. Now it's day 0. So how do we design an agent like this? The reality is there's not one approach. And that's why I have actually 3 versions of what is fundamentally the same agent here. On the far right, I have a functional agent. So it's a Llama 7DB endpoint with tools connected through our MCP server, and I've given it a simple set of instructions to follow. In the middle, I have upgraded the model to NVIDIA's Nematron model. Nematron has great reasoning, so this is a React architecture. Reasoning, observation, and then it performs action. And then on the far left, I have a multi-agent architecture, still using Nematron, but where each sub-agent works independently, and then a conductor agent brings everything together in a final response. What's really great about seeing all these compared is that they do all feel very different. Not just subjectively, but we also have LLM as a judge metrics and other metrics to tell us exactly how these are performing. What you can see is that Nematron, specifically NVIDIA's post-training optimization, gives us a model with great reasoning capability, really good code generation, but it's also fast, and we could embed that model right at the edge. And nevertheless, you always see that it's actually live. So we can embed that model right at the edge. But this is just 3 variations. The possibilities are actually endless. And that's why we've launched an open source project we call Sifter. Sifter can test hundreds or thousands of variations of agent architecture, swapping out the models, swapping out embedders, swapping for re-ranking, taking our system prompt and rewriting it on the fly. But we test each of those architectures to find the balance between accuracy cost, or accuracy and latency. And what you can see here on this chart is as we test it, Nematron really sets the standard for balancing accuracy and latency across all the architectures that we test.
I do want to maybe take a pause and really emphasize this, because this is not the same as just picking 3 different combinations and testing them side by side, which is what technically humanly is possible. But this is really taking a data-driven approach and trying thousands of permutations and combinations, again, based on your criteria of cost, latency, and performance.
Great. Now, Prajakta, the other thing you asked me is about implementation. So we're working on our designs. How are we going to implement this? I work with a lot of teams, and they do have their favorite frameworks and toolkits, Llama Index, Crew AI, and I say keep those frameworks and toolkits, but let's do things to make the development fun. Now, fun is being able to drop in new functionality for your agent on the fly. So here, if you've never seen this before, this is called a tracing view. And I can go into the tracing view, and I can see here my agent immediately calling for the forecast for butter supply for our Phoenix bakery. And now I see the forecast starting from 8:15 going forward. I didn't have to write the code to do this, because all of those forecasts, those models, and all the tools my agent needs through Model Context Protocol are immediately available to use. That's fun. Likewise, it's fun getting exactly the component you need when you need it. And that's why within DataRobot, we've embedded the entire catalog of NVIDIA NIM containers. So if you need something to do OCR, there's a model available. If you need to do audio processing, there's a model available. If you just want the latest and greatest, like GPT OSS, it's available 1 click to deploy. We also have cloud-hosted models so that you can benefit from the endpoints and some of the industry's leading researchers like Cohere and other groups. Now, so that's implementation, and we bring all this together in simple-to-use code templates so that you can launch agents by simply typing out deploy. So Prajakta, we ready to give this a try?
It certainly looks like you've done your homework, and we have an optimized agent ready to go live. But before we do that, I do want to take a moment to give our audience here some non-negotiables that they should be thinking about as they are navigating this first stage of the agent lifecycle. So first and foremost, you absolutely need to make sure you're selecting the architecture for your specific use case and evaluating it for your environment and your data. Secondly, you should not be asked or required to start from scratch. I'm sure you've spent years building a great data foundation, a great machine learning foundation. You have your forecasting models that are tuned for your use cases. you should be able to leverage those to build these new agents and build your digital workforce. And then lastly, I have never seen a developer give up their favorite IDE, and I don't think you should be asking them to do so. And it's not just your AI engineers or your developers, your data scientists, your business users, they all need to collaborate to build your agent workforce. So you need to be able to provide flexibility for your diverse teams while still being able to standardize on a platform that gives you security, visibility, and control. So are we ready to hit that go live button?
Yeah, of course.
All right, well, we are ready. Our agents are hired, they're onboarded, and now we are ready to assign them real projects and deploy them in our enterprise. So when it comes to day one, you all should be thinking about how do you get the confidence? Are you protected against these agents interacting with your data, with your tools, with humans in your organization? And do you have the right monitoring in place and the ability to mitigate issues as they arise? Secondly, we heard John and Debanchan talk about how these agents require a fundamentally different infrastructure. They talked about the AI factory. So how do you make sure you have the capacity plan to give these agents the capacity that they need? These agents are all non-deterministic. So you wouldn't know ahead of time how they would scale. And as they interact, again, across hundreds or thousands of users within your organization, they will need different types of capacity, different amounts of capacity at different points in time. So how do you capacity plan for your agents? And then lastly, it is not just one agent or one team, though that's the example we are walking you through. I am sure you have at least 5 different teams today who want to start on their agentic AI journey, deploy agents into production. So how do you securely scale agentic AI across your organization?
All right. So there's a lot to unpack here. So we'll go back into the platform and let's take a look at how we address some of these concerns. So I showed a glimpse of this earlier, but let's talk about the guardrails and evaluations. As I mentioned, things like goal accuracy and task adherence, these are LLM as a judge metrics, but they allow us to set some standards and benchmarks. This industry is changing so fast, you have to set a clear benchmark and standard for how you want your agents evaluated and how you want them to perform. Because you can't just rely on teams to do that. Things are just moving too quickly. One of the other things that we have here is we have PII detection and other guardrails. Because even when your agent interacts with your customers, you don't want your customers putting their whole life story into your agent, right? There are some cases where they should defer to human intervention or should defer to some other avenue, and guardrails can help you do that. This one here looks for things like account numbers, birthdays, and things like that, and will put up a warning to say that a human could go in the loop or whatever's required. In addition to this evaluation, we want to be able to repeat these evaluations as we make changes to the agent. And so we can create evaluation data sets that can repeat chats over and over again and aggregate the results for us. So as we make changes, we can have that clear standard and clear benchmark for how these should perform. Now, the other thing you asked is about scalability. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull up the Nematron deployment that is powering our agent here. But to do that, I have to spell it correctly. So scalability is an important consideration, but it's also something your platform should take care of for you. That's why we've built this hand in glove with NVIDIA so that we get the latest hardware and the latest libraries like DataRobot Covalent and NVIDIA Dynamo, so compute and GPUs scale automatically. And it's not just by requests per second. It's by the required token throughput, the reasoning effort. It's by the characteristics of your agent. So the agent interfacing with a customer gets more resources than the agent that asynchronously categorizes documents, which is going to be low priority. So we've got the scalability, we've looked at the guardrails, we've looked at the evals. Prajakta, do you think we're ready to go live?
I am ready to push that live button and have our agents start delivering on mission critical projects. But let me, again, try to summarize it and give our audience here some non-negotiables that they should be thinking of at day one. So at day one, first and foremost, you need to ensure that you have the controls to auto-mitigate any unwanted behavior and end-to-end monitoring so you can keep track of what your agents are doing. And this is not something that you think of once you deploy agents into production. You really need to be able to red team and test these ahead of time and then hit the go live button. So now that we've done that, you also need to adopt a runtime that's optimized for this new world of agentic AI. Because scaling for agentic AI is quite different. It's unlike just scaling on requests per second. You need to be taking into account the reasoning that the agent might need to do, the tools that the agent might need to access, in addition to the scale or the number of requests the agent is getting. And then lastly, you absolutely need to ensure that your platform can support collaboration, but with the right guardrails in place, where you can maintain security, you can have teams access things that they are authorized to access, and hold different teams accountable for the agents that they're running. So now that our agents are live and they're delivering on our mission-critical tasks, we really are thinking a bit ahead. And that's what we're calling day 90. It could be day 90, day 100, day 200, but really looking ahead, just like your human workforce, your agents will need upskilling. And when it comes to upskilling, even today, the industry is moving so rapidly that there's a new model on the market every other week, there's a new framework. And I'm sure your agents will need additional tools that you would want to make them available to your agents. So how do you ensure that you can upgrade your agents that are now running in your production environments, delivering on critical tasks without causing any production outages? The second thing you should be thinking about is how do you keep up with compliance? So it's not just about your tech upgrades. How do you keep up with evolving regulatory compliance, evolving corporate policies? Because your agents will not be just operating in a single jurisdiction. You would want your agents deployed across your global infrastructure, across your global enterprise. And then lastly, I am sure there are many skeptics in your organization who are thinking, well, this agentic AI is going to cost a lot. Is it really going to deliver all the ROIs that you are promising? So what is a better way to do that than having ability to monitor and track your usage, your costs, control costs, but also being able to report tangibly on the business ROI. So these are some key considerations for day 90. And I'm going to hand it back to Luke. So Luke, do you think we can address these and be more confident about operating our agent workforce?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm going to do, you mentioned keeping up with changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull up the source code for our agent. As I mentioned, it's running on Nematron, which you can see right here. Most of you should know there was a new release of the Nematron model just 3 weeks ago. So if I want to upgrade this to Nematron 1.5, it should be as easy as I can make that change and I can say task deploy, and it'll immediately go ahead and tell me everything that was dependent on that change, and we'll go ahead and do it.
Does that mean I can also deploy the latest NIM chat GPT OSS?
Yes, it does. Yes, thank you for asking. It sure does. Absolutely. So here, again, it's identified all the dependencies. Now, the other aspect of keeping up with this change is we want the agents to benefit from all the work they've already done over the previous 90 days. So here's the agent actually running on DataRobot, and I can go in and I can see really detailed metrics about how it's performing. All those guardrails and evaluations I talked about, they are still running for every invocation of our agent in production. Task adherence, agent goal accuracy, even the PII identification. I can even go into a tracing view and I can pull up in detail every single invocation and how it was processed. Also important, I can export the invocations and their responses as a tabular data set. And the reason this is important is I can send that back in to be an evaluation data set. so I can harvest the best responses and use it to incrementally improve the agent that we've launched. Now, the other thing that changes all the time that I did not mention before is the data our agent uses. When users interact with the agents, we want them to use their own data. And so we have to create that chain of authentication from the user through the agent all to their data source. This is the concept of the homework I was talking about. And so that's why on DataRobot we have OAuth provider management. So 90 days in, if one of your employees changes role or leaves your enterprise, their authentication means they can no longer access this data. So SharePoint, Google Drive, and Office, we inherit that security structure for all the agents. We don't have to re-implement it 100 different times for 100 different users. Now, compliance. Compliance is really critical for our highly regulated industries. I'm going to actually switch use cases briefly. This is adapted from one of our financial services customers, and hopefully it keeps up with me here as I click around. And what this agent does is it provides detailed financial reports based on, for equities and investments. Yeah, so here's a financial outlook for one type of investment. And what the customer is able to do is actually define a specific compliance test. So they're using the PII guardrail that we looked at before. They're using a test of completeness to make sure they're covering the issue completely. And this is a test they can now run through CI/CD for every change that they're doing. And they can say nothing goes live unless this compliance test passes. Taking it a step further, we can even aggregate all these tests into what we call a compliance document. And that compliance document is the artifact needed if you're ever going to take this agent and this AI use case in front of an audit committee or some sort of other compliance review. And that's exactly what this is for. I left something out. So.
What about my cost?
Yeah, all right. So, right, exactly. Every CIO's question is, what about costs? So let me go back to the DataRobot console. And really, this is the single pane of glass. I have 148 workflows that I'm tracking here. And again, I showed a glimpse of this before, but let's talk about it in more detail. Right for my agent, I can define a metric of cost. I can define cost as tokens per million, or I could define a cost that's use case specific in terms of savings or revenue generated or however that might be. But most importantly, we can use this cost metric to allow you to do some chargeback across your organization and make sure that everybody is contributing to keeping up your agentic workforce. No.
Well done. Well, so bringing us home here, all right, so to ensure that you have thought through your future concerns and to really future-proof your agentic AI investments, first and foremost, you need to ensure that you're adopting a platform and tools that will allow you to upgrade with ease, without any downtime. Secondly, it not only allows you to do tech upgrades, but it allows you to comply with evolving corporate and regulatory policies so that it's not an afterthought. And you don't make your agentic AI a liability for your organization, but can treat it as an asset. And then finally, as Luke showed us, you can measure your costs, you can put controls around it, and you can also define metrics that are custom to your business to be able to reflect how you're delivering value over time to your internal stakeholders so that you can be very data-driven in delivering ROI on your agentic AI investments. Now, I know we have gone over a lot here, but this is truly your checklist to put your agents and take your agents from beyond just demos and put them in your production environment. And if your tools, platform that you're adopting cannot deliver on these, you shouldn't be trusting that platform with your enterprise data.